Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome back to another upload. My name is Nique Rozay. If you are new here, welcome to the channel. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back, guys. All right, y'all. So if you've been following me, you know that in my last video, I told y'all that I was going to do a story time. I told y'all about how I had become a hospice nurse. It was never on my radar or anything like that. I told y'all I had a story time about when I was my dad's hospice nurse. So I have some time today. I actually have a little time before a meeting. I have a meeting this morning. I am currently working, but I'm not working. But I have a meeting at 1 o'clock. So I had some time. So I decided that I would come on and give y'all that story time today. All right, so without further ado, y'all, we're going to get right into it, okay? And this is going to be raw and unedited. I'm not going to do a lot of editing to this video, so bear with me. So we're going to go back to 2016. In 2016, I moved away, and then I ended up moving back, okay? My dad, when I came back, my father has always been like an active father in my life. Like, I've never been without my dad, ever. So when I moved back to town, my dad had this, I noticed that he had this really bad cough, like a very hacking cough. And it sounded bad. At that time, I was not in the medical field. I didn't have any medical background, but I knew that it didn't sound right. So he had like this really bad cough. He was coughing up blood, but nothing other than that, So I'm like, Dad, have you had that checked on? He told me no. At that time, he didn't even have insurance. So me being me, mind you, my dad used to smoke. He used to smoke cigarettes, and he actually worked in like a textile mill for like 30 years. Okay. Me being me, I'm like, Dad, well, let's look into what we can do to get you a doctor. So at this time, I'm young. I'm probably like 22 years old. So at this time, I'm running around. I got my dad a doctor where he could be seen based off of his income, based off his eligibility to pay. I got him in at a primary doctor. So they referred him to a lung specialist. He went to a lung specialist for like a whole year. They were taking biopsies of his lung for like a whole year, like once, every couple of weeks. I was having to take him to the hospital so they could put him to sleep, so that they could biopsy his lung or whatever, because they were thinking that he had lung cancer. And I'm not even gonna lie, I ain't even gonna hold y'all. I thought he did too. It just seemed that way. Anyway, come to find out, he did not have lung cancer, and they went in to do surgery to remove the lung, okay? They ended up going in, they were going to remove part of the lung, just a damaged piece of the lung. And when they got in there, it was damaged more than they thought. So they ended up taking out the whole lung. That's what we were told. The surgery lasted about, oh my gosh, y'all, it lasted about 8 hours. No lie. It was me, my niece, and my ex at the time. It was us at the hospital at these doctor's appointments. So when he had the surgery, we were in the waiting room for like 8 hours. At the time, I had 3 small kids. My kids were small at that time. So he got the surgery, got part of the lung taken out. He went to intensive care unit. He stayed there for about a week. I was there visiting, in and out. I had his car at the time, coming back and forth. He stayed there. They kept him in the hospital for about a week, and then they sent him home. They sent him home to live with his sister, and we're going to call this sister Michelle. They sent him home to live with his sister because he already was living with his sister. He and his sister were like very close. Like, they've always lived together for as long as I can remember. And that was just kind of like their thing, very close family. Have a very close family on my dad's side. And so anyway, he went back home, and she was seeing after him. And then about a week, I got a call of him being home. I got a call. She told me that she took him back to the hospital because she went to check on him, and he was like in bed, just drenched in like sweat. I don't know if it was sweat or infection from the incision line. So he went back to the hospital. What happened was they had to open his chest back up because he had got a rare infection in the space where they took the lung out of, and his whole chest cavity had filled up with like pus or whatever, and it was like a rare infection. Okay, so after that, he went home. He was good. This was 2016. My dad is a fisherman. He is a fisherman for real. Like, he's on the water every day, all day, sun up, sun down. He don't care. All seasons, he's on the water. Like, this is what he does. So anyway, this was 2016. My dad was fine after that, fully recovered. He had his normal shortness of breath because at this time, he's operating with one lung, right? But he adapted to that, no problems. All right. I go on, finish nursing school, graduate 3 times. My dad is there. Like, me and my dad we like this. Like, y'all, we like this. That's my baby. Okay. So we're going to fast forward to, it is 2024. We're going to fast forward to summer of 2023. My dad starts complaining. He's complaining, telling me that he's having some pain on the side where they took his lung out on the right side. So I'm like, well, Dad, perhaps it's just scar tissue. Maybe it's scar tissue. They sewed him up so tight he kind of leaned to one side a little bit. I'm like, maybe it's scar tissue. That could be what it is. Could be from you casting your rod out. So as a nurse at this time, I have every possible explanation for what it could be, and it made sense to me, right? But it was nothing to put him down or anything, like, it didn't keep him in the bed. It was just, I'm gonna take some goody powder and I'm going about my day, and that's what he did. And then I noticed, like, I would talk to him and then he would tell me, yeah, baby, I went to the emergency room on last week. And my dad, he's not a complainer. He's not one to go to a hospital for little things. He does not believe in running up hospital bills. He's like from the old school. He's one of them guys, right? So he was telling me, he's like, yeah, baby, I went to the hospital last week. And I'm like, well, what'd you go for, Dad? He's like, well, I went because I was throwing up. I was so sick, baby. I was throwing up. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, oh, okay, well, what they say? In my mind, I'm already thinking, oh, you had a stomach bug. And, that's what he comes out and says. He's like, oh, they said I had a stomach bug. And they gave me, I don't know, he's saying, I don't know what they gave me, baby. I'm like, oh, okay, Dad, I'm pretty sure they gave you Zofran. And then he spells it out for me. I'm like, yep, that's what they gave you. So, okay, this pain keeps going on. So I'm like, Dad, we got to get you to your primary doctor because they're going to have to do something, because he's telling me, I'm like, Dad, well, rate it for me on a scale of 1 to 10. He's like, baby, it's about a 9. And this goes on for like months, him going back and forth to the doctor, them telling him he has a pulled muscle, it's arthritis. They're giving him gabapentin. This went on for some months. So at this time, I reach out to his primary caregiver because I'm on his HIPAA paperwork. I've always been very active in his healthcare, his doctor's appointments. I reach out to her and I'm like, hey, my dad, he's not very good at communicating these needs. He doesn't really understand the medical terminology and medical jargon, so you guys gotta, what's going on. I'm like, his pain is not getting any better. So she's like, well, we're going to run a bunch of tests. So during this time, he goes in, he gets some blood work done. The blood work comes back. Everything is off. Every lab value that you can have in a blood panel was off. So she tells me, okay, we're going to refer him to oncology hematology. That's a cancer center. So in my mind immediately goes to, I'm thinking about what I remember learning in school. I was thinking multiple myeloma, just because the way his blood values looked or whatever. So anyway, this appointment is like at least over a month off, right? So during this time, he's getting in even more pain to the point where he's not even sleeping at night. He's telling me, baby, it feels like somebody is stabbing me through the mattress with a knife in my shoulder. It's my shoulder. So he's up all night, but then he gets up in the morning, he's going fishing. He goes fishing, and the little time that he does have some pain relief while driving home, he falls asleep, because this man has been up for days and days at a time and nights at a time without sleeping. So the moment that he does get some rest, he falls asleep. My dad fell asleep driving his car from coming fishing. And I happened to call him, and he said, baby, I'm glad you called me because I must have fell asleep. And I said, well, fell asleep where, Dad? He said, well, baby, I'm coming home from the lake. I said, you're driving? And he said, yeah. He said, I woke up and my car was on the other side of the road in a ditch. When I called him, his car was in a ditch. And immediately I'm worried. I am worried. So he didn't get hurt or anything. He didn't hurt anybody. I immediately called his doctor. I'm like, hey, we got to get something done quicker. He's falling asleep. The pain is so bad. We've got to do something. So they get the appointment pushed up for his lab draws, for him to go to hematology, for them to draw his blood work and do their own analysis. Right. So, shortly after that, my dad goes into the hospital. My aunt calls me and is like, hey, I took your dad to the hospital. He's just had this cough and he's just tired. Take him to the hospital. This was November of 2023. They end up admitting him in the hospital for pneumonia. While in the hospital, they go ahead and do, he was supposed to go for MRI. He had an MRI schedule, but while he was already in the hospital, they just went ahead and did it. This was the end of November 2023. They treated him for pneumonia, sent him home. I'm in his my chart. I created his my chart because I'm the only one that's really active in his healthcare. So I open up his my chart. I get a call from the doctor. They're telling me that his MRI showed some pleural thickening, some changes that weren't there over the summer when he was going back and forth to the doctor. And basically they confirmed that he had stage, let me back up. They took a biopsy. They did an MRI, saw some changes. This was before he went to the hospital. He had an MRI done, and they saw some changes. So they were going to address that as well when he went to his oncology appointment. And they had him set up for a biopsy further out. But when he went into the hospital, they went ahead and did everything there. Took the biopsy, did more blood work. So December 1st comes back. His biopsy was positive for lung cancer. I think it was non-small cell lung cancer. Yep. And it was already stage 3 to 4. Okay. This was December of 2023. Okay. So at this time, I've moved states. I moved over the summer. My dad moved me. Crazy enough, my dad at that time had stage 3 or 4 lung cancer and was packing up a whole U-Haul of furniture, driving me out of state and unloading it and doing everything. So anyways, so at this time I'm living in a whole nother state, but I've been driving back and forth to where my dad lives, which is over 2 hours from me, driving back and forth, like taking care of him, taking him to doctor's offices. I was working 16-hour shifts. I was doing only contract work at the time. So I was able to kind of move how I wanted to. So I would pick up work in that state and work 16-hour shifts and get off in the morning and take my dad to appointments, and then drive back to my hometown, up for 20 something hours at a time. Why is my camera not focusing? Okay, y'all. Up for 24 hours at a time, 30 hours at a time, right? And anyway, so we meet with the doctor. They set up an appointment for us to come in to talk to a cancer specialist to answer any questions, to go over treatment options. So off top, they told us that radiation wasn't an option, surgery wasn't an option because it was too far spread, the cancer was too big. So our only option was chemo. So we do chemo. We started chemo. My dad, I asked him, I said, Dad, are you okay with this? I said, anytime you can pull out, you don't have to do it, because in my mind, I already know what chemo does to the body, So, and he told us, he said, essentially we would just be buying time, with chemo, because without chemo, his chances of living would be 6 months or less. So he said that we would just essentially be buying time. My dad said that he was on board to try chemo. He was just not a complainer at all. He never complained about anything. So January, we start chemo. He did really well with it. I came down for his first chemo sessions, and he did good. No problems, no nausea, no nothing. And so he started driving himself. And then sorry, I'm sending the message. Okay, so he was driving himself to and from chemo, and I'm like, mind you, he's still living with his Aunt Michelle. I'm like, Dad, why don't you get her to come? He's like, no, baby, I got it. If I need help, I'll ask for help. I'm good. I'm okay. I got it. So that was that. Did great with chemo. Come February, he's done with chemo, so they're going to start what's called immunotherapy, which is like a treatment. It's also administered in an IV form, and so it helps to it kind of stimulates the body immune system to fight off things, so it's immunotherapy. It builds up your own immune system. And so he starts that, and he does his first round. He does the first round, and he has an allergic reaction. And he called me. He's like, baby, they had to stop it because my heart rate got up really high. And he's like, I was itching and I turned red. And I was like, oh, Dad, you had a reaction to it, So they stopped it, did what they had to do. And so he just got really weak. He was really weak in February after that. Very weak. He was still trying to go fishing. And then he told me, he said, I went fishing and I walked down the hill, but baby, I couldn't get back up. I couldn't come back up. He said, I'm just tired. And I'm thinking okay, Dad, they told us that immunotherapy did come with extreme fatigue as a side effect, that's something that you could possibly experience. And so we had all the reasons, we had everything, we had all the rationales as to why he was feeling how he's feeling, and I'm like, well, maybe it's just now catching up with you because you've been doing great. He's like, yeah, maybe you're right. And at this time, his voice is starting to get super hoarse, super low, super hoarse. And I'm thinking he's feeling the effects of chemo. He's already lost his hair. He didn't have any nausea. Okay, he's going to be the guy that gets the extreme fatigue, right? So that's what we're thinking at this time. So so after that, he's telling me, he's like, baby, I'm gonna go to church. You know, I went down and ironed up all of his church clothes so that he could go to church, you know, because my dad was very active in the church. I ironed up his clothes so that he could go to church. And then I waited until after I thought church was over to call him. I was like, Dad, well, how was service? He says, oh, baby, I didn't get to go. I got up to go and put my clothes on, baby, and I couldn't make it. I was so weak, I had to take my clothes back off and lay down. So at this point, I'm knowing, like, okay, something's not right. This is not my dad. This is not him. He does not miss church. He does not lay in the bed. He's the up with the sun kind of guy, you know, and this is just not him. So I'm thinking, okay, things are progressing. So next thing you know, I'm calling the oncologist. I'm in constant contact with the oncologist, like through my chart. I'm sending messages. He's calling me. We're talking back and forth. So we're talking. I'm telling him what's going on. He's like, yeah, I think we need to stop the immunotherapy for now. You know, some people don't tolerate it, and if he's weak, we're going to give him this, and it's going to make him even weaker. We need to hold off on it. So I agreed, and but during this time, my dad's just getting progressively weaker. Every time we go to the doctor, he's lost 3 more pounds, 4 pounds. Like, he's barely 100 pounds at this point, and he's eating, you know, but his body's just not using it. His body's not metabolizing nutrition or anything. So by the end of February, I get a call from my aunt. In between this time, I've been back and forth down there. I've been back and forth. The end of February, my dad is in the hospital. I get a call from my aunt. My dad is in the hospital. Okay. He goes to the hospital. His heart rate is super high. What's happening is his calcium is critically high. Cancer, if you don't know, when you have cancer creates hormones that elevate your calcium. So if any, you know, hypercalcemia is common with people that have cancer due to the hormones secreted by cancers. So my dad's calcium is like critically high. So they take him to the hospital, and they're giving him fluids to just try to bring it down. His heart rate is high. He's dehydrated. So he's in the hospital. I leave here and immediately head down. So I get there. I'm at the hospital with my dad. You know, I'm staying there with him. So he gets to feeling a little better. He goes back home. This is the end of February. March comes. I'm talking to my dad on the phone, keeping up with his medications, you know, trying to see where we go. In my mind, I'm seeing the change in my dad, because for like a week, my dad went from calling me every single day, every day, all night, just checking on me. He wants to know that I'm safe. He wants to know that I'm okay. He wants to know what his grandkids are doing. You know, he's just, he wants me to pray with him at night. And then for like a whole week, my dad didn't call me. And I would call him and he wouldn't answer. This is my dad's cell phone. Like, I set my dad's cell phone up. You know, me and my dad talked every night. I've been paying my dad's cell phone bill for like 4 years, ever since I bought him the phone. You know, but so he knows how to work the phone. He knows when I call, you know, my name comes up. So if he could answer, he would have answered. But my dad was so sick and so weak. He was in his bed there and couldn't even answer the phone for me, you know, and he couldn't call me. And so that was a hard thing for me, because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking like, wow, I haven't talked to my dad today. He didn't call me today. That's not like him. You know, I call him, he's not answering, you know. And then when I did talk to him on the phone, he would tell me, he's like, yeah, baby, I was asleep, you know. So now I'm noticing that he's sleeping like 18 hours a day. He sleep more than he is awake, you know. So I'm like, okay, I see where we're going, because I at the time, I'm a hospice nurse now, you know. So I know what's going on. He's just sleeping. His voice is so low and so weak and so hoarse. So this went on for about a week. This was the beginning of March. And then he kind of bounced back a little bit. He started answering the phone when I called, but he wouldn't stay on the phone long because he was so winded, so short of breath. And then the mid part of March, I'm talking to his oncologist. I'm like, so where do we go from here? Like, are we starting back chemo? What are we doing? So he's like, well, I want to rescan him and restage him. He says, because, you know, with him getting treatment, his symptoms are to be getting better. The calcium should not be that high. He shouldn't be getting progressively weaker if the treatment is working. I need to rescan him and see if his cancer has spread. So, but before this could happen, before this could happen, I'm in contact with his sister, Michelle. We're in constant contact. I'm like, because, it's just me and you that's doing this. Me and you, my dad lives there with you. I'm his daughter. I'm the only one that's involved on the outside. So it's pretty much just me and you. So I'm telling her, I'm like, hey, I think we should start considering hospice at this point, because they've already told us that his last resort would be chemo, and if he couldn't tolerate that, then we have no more options and we're just buying time. So we need to start looking into alternatives, because we can't keep taking him back and forth to the hospital to get fluids, and it's really not fixing the issue, So she was on board. She was like, well, what do you want to do? What do you think? So, I told her, I said, well, the doctor's going to rescan him and we'll just go from there when we get the results or whatever. So end of March, my dad ends up going into the hospital again. She calls me. No, she didn't call me. I was driving and I was checking my email and I had results from my chart in there. And I'm like, and I opened them. I'm always monitoring my chart. So I opened them and it was showing results from that morning, from like 6 a.m. that morning. It was about 9:30. And I'm like, this must be wrong. My dad hasn't had any labs done. It's 6 in the morning. He was just at home last night. So, and then it dawned on me. I'm like, is he in the hospital? So I called my aunt and I was like, hey, are y'all at the hospital? She's like, yeah, well, I brought him down here about 6 this morning, but I didn't want to call you until I knew for sure what was going on. She's like, but they're going to admit him, this, that, and the third, rah, whatever. They're going to admit him, same thing, basically. Hypercalcemia, dehydration, heart rate elevated, magnesium low, potassium low. Same thing, right? And then she tells me like, yeah, he's gotten so weak that he's using a cane at home. And I'm like, a cane? And she said, yeah, I had to get him a shower chair. I'm like, a shower chair? Since when did he need a shower chair? So this is cueing me in on how sick he is. So I immediately leave work and come down the road or whatever. So I get down the road and my dad is, he's there. He's in the hospital. He's getting treatment or whatever. He's okay. He's stable. So I leave and I come back home and I contact his doctor and tell him like, hey, just want to let you know he's in the hospital. He'll probably be there during that appointment that you had set up for him to get his cancer restaged. Is it possible that you can go and visit him where he is? And he was like, yes, absolutely. So he goes over and I told him, I said, this is what I'm thinking. I said, I'm thinking we need to look into the hospice route. He was like, okay. He said, I agree with you. I'm on board with you. He said, but I have to have him tell me that that's what he wants to do. He was like, but I'm going to have them restage him, rescan his cancer while he's there, and we can go from there. So they ended up restaging my dad's cancer in the hospital. It had not it hadn't metastasized to other parts of his body, but it had gotten bigger in the cavity in which it was in, which let us know that the chemotherapy was not working. Now my dad is so weak he can hardly get up and walk to the bathroom by himself. My dad is small. He is small, tiny at this point. I get down there and my dad has to go to the bathroom and I go and help him, and my dad is literally hovering over my shoulder, like holding on to me. And I'm like, what? This was heartbreaking to me, because this was not my dad in January, and this is March. This was not my dad in February. Like, I'm going to insert, I may go back and insert some pictures. Like, my dad was he was a man, you know what I'm saying? So to see my dad go from being my hero, my dad, to he can hardly support himself to stand up, it was devastating. And but anyways, this is what I'm looking at. This is what I'm dealing with at this time. So Dr. Johnson, he calls me and he says, like I said, he told me that it had gotten bigger, hadn't metastasized. He agreed on hospice. I'm at home at this time. So I tell my aunt Michelle, and she's like, okay, I agree. So the caseworker there is talking to her. She tells the caseworker one thing, but tells me another. She tells me, I agree, he does, let's do hospice, And then the caseworker calls me and tells me, well, she's telling me that she's overwhelmed. She doesn't think she can do it, And I went ahead and I told her that, we will have someone that will come out through the week. He can have a CNA, she will have help. And I'm like, absolutely, absolutely. She says she doesn't think she could do it, and she wants to look into placement. She said she asked if he could go to the hospice house inpatient unit, And I explained to her that he was not dying and that that type of facility was for somebody that death was imminent within like in the next 5 days, 5 days or so. And I said, absolutely. Mind you, I'm a hospice nurse. I already know that. But I had no idea that this is what his sister is feeling, you know. So she said, well, at the end of the conversation, she ended up telling me that she's going to give it a try. She's going to give it a go and see if she can do it. Mind you, my dad has 7 or 8 other siblings, majority brothers. Everybody's retired. Nobody's in bad health. They all live in close proximity of each other, like maybe 10 minutes apart, some 1 minute apart, like across the street from each other. So I call her and I'm like, hey, the case manager told me you're feeling this way. I'm like, yeah. I said, I can come down. I said, I will come down on Fridays and stay Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That will relieve you for the weekend because I know you still like to go. You still like to live. You still like to do things. You know what I'm saying? She's like, yeah, that'll work. That's fine. Me and my brothers are going to get together and we're going to, we're going to figure it out. I told them to keep him in the hospital over the weekend. This was on a Thursday. I told them to keep him in the hospital over the weekend to give us time to clean out his bedroom so that they can bring a hospice bed out. I'm like, cool, okay. So my dad is in the hospital. I'm thinking that from what I know, he's going home on hospice. He's going to have a hospital bed in his room at their home where they have lived together for over 10 years now. 15 probably. So I'm like, okay, cool. This is what we're doing now. This is good. He's going to be comfortable, So then she calls me back. She immediately calls me back. But I told the case manager, I said, no, you can stop the placement paperwork. I said, you mean like a nursing home? I said, oh no. I said, that's not going to happen. I said, because before that happens, I'll come and get my dad. He can come home with me. So after I got off the phone with my aunt, it wasn't even 2 minutes later, she called me back. She said, hey, Nique, does he have more insurance? Life insurance. My dad had a policy, right? He already has a policy. She says, because I know I was on one of the policies with you as beneficiary and then he took me off and it was just you. But I was calling to see, did he have another one somewhere? Weren't you trying to help him get another policy? I said, no, he doesn't have another one. I said, because when I tried to help him get more life insurance because of when they pulled his medical records, even before he got his cancer diagnosis, because he had even a referral to oncology, and due to his weight loss and just all of the things that were in his chart, they denied him coverage. They wouldn't cover him. And she was like, oh, okay. She said, I'm asking because our brother said that we may want to start getting things in order. I said, oh yeah, that's fine. And I said, but I'm not on his bank account, so I don't know about that. She said, oh well, I don't think he has much in there anyway. All right, bye. We hang up the phone. That's it. Okay, guys, sorry about that. So I'm telling her, I'm like, well, I'm not on his bank account, so I don't really know about that. But she's like, oh yeah, I don't think he has much in his bank account anyway. So I'm like, okay, whatever. My mind is not even thinking about finances. I just want to take care of my dad. So this was on was this Thursday or Friday? This was a Friday. Okay, this was a Friday. Let's go back. I said it was Thursday. It was Friday. This is a Friday. So I'm under the impression when I hang up the phone that my dad is staying in the hospital over the weekend, waiting to go home. They're home getting his bed situated, getting his room cleared out for a hospital bed. Saturday comes and I'm planning to go home anyways. I'm planning to go home. I've already picked up a shift to work there because I'm going to go stay with my dad at the hospital until 11 at night, and then I'm going to work from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. I get a phone call from my mom. My mom's like, hey, there's been a change of plans. I'm like, what? Change of plans? What? My mom's like, yeah, your Aunt Michelle, she called me and said she doesn't think she should do it. She prayed on it. She got together with her brothers and they all decided that she couldn't take care of your dad and that he needs to come to live with you. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, when is she going to call me and tell me? I was like, that's fine. I was like, I just wish she would have said this yesterday when I even mentioned it when they were talking about putting him in a nursing home. I said, I wish they would have mentioned that yesterday because I could have put in the referral for my own company and had him squared away. This is just like very inconvenient now that I can't talk to anybody because it's a weekend and every case manager at the hospital is now gone for the week. Right. So my mom was like, yeah, I know. I was like, well, I'll just wait for her to call me. So a whole hour goes by and she calls me. My aunt calls me. She's like, hey, she called me. She didn't even lead the conversation with saying, I don't think I'm going to be able to take care of him. It's best if you come home. She led the conversation with something else. And I'm already waiting for her to get to it because I'm thinking that's why you're calling me. So then she says, yeah, I'm not going to be able to take care of him. I'm sick myself. I got health issues myself. which I don't know of any, but that's neither here nor there. She's like, I got health issues myself, and I think it's best if you take him back to such and such with you. I said, okay. I said, that's fine. I said, so let me get this straight. The only reason he's staying in the hospital right now is because you guys were buying time to clear out his room to put a hospital bed in, right? I said, there's no medical reason, right? Because they've already went comfort care in the hospital. Like, they've already stopped fluids and everything. She said, correct. I said, okay, well, I'm coming down. I'm on my way down anyway. When I get there, I'm going to talk to the doctor and see if I can have them discharge him tomorrow. That way I can just bring him back home with me, and there's no need for me to take off work to come back and pick him up on Monday. She said, okay. She said, I just feel like it's best if you did it, because if you just took him home with you, because you're more experienced in this, you're a nurse, you'll know how to medicate him and this, that, and the third. It was just a bunch of, excuses, basically. But at the time, I was thinking that, at the time I was sympathizing, like, it's no problem. This is my dad. I'm honored. I've been saying this. I don't have a problem with taking my dad home. You can't do it. It's fine. I'll do it. Now, mind you, I live alone with just my kids. So, I come down, I get to the hospital. No, I'm on my way to town, and I go by their house to get my dad's clothes, to get his important documents like his insurance policies, his social security cards, his identification, because I know that he's coming home with me to go on hospice. I know what hospice means. Hospice means you have about 6 months or less if your disease takes its normal course. So, of course, I need all of these things. So I get to his house. When I get to his room, he has like documents. He doesn't have documents spread out, but there are documents spread out on his bed. There was his pension paperwork. There were some bank statements on the bed. There were some car insurance bills on the bed. So I just swept up everything. My dad normally kept his debit card, license, social security card in a frame on his wall. Because someone had stolen his wallet, and I think it hurt him because he lost some important photos in there, and he just never wanted to get a wallet again. But I knew that all of his stuff was on the wall where it had always been. So when I went to get that, the only thing that was in the frame was his insurance card and his social security card. So I'm like, okay, where's his insurance policies at? Where's his debit card? Because mind you, my dad had been sick. He was not driving anymore. He was not leaving home, but I knew he had a debit card because I'd seen it. I'd showed him how to work it before. So when I leave there, I call her. I'm like, hey, Michelle, I just left the house. I just got my dad's things. I said, but I don't see his debit card and I don't see his insurance policy. She said, oh, well, maybe he must have lost his debit card. Maybe he must have lost it. I said, okay, maybe he did. I'm just playing along. But in my mind, I'm like, my dad hasn't lost his debit card. He hasn't been going anywhere. He doesn't drive. He doesn't spend money. He just does not. He doesn't even eat out. So when I got to the hospital, she was there, and as well as 3 of my uncles, they were all there. And before I got to the hospital, she told me on the phone, when you come and get him, don't tell him that it's my idea for him to go back up there. Just tell him that the doctors think it's best. So in my mind, I'm already calling bullcrap, because why can't he know that you said that you couldn't do it, that you said, and speaking for yourself and your brothers, said that you all came to a collective agreement that you couldn't take care of him. You couldn't take shifts, take turns, or come up with any kind of plan to take care of him, and that I should take him home with me to another state, away from his brothers and sisters, right? But anyway, in my mind, I was already thinking like I would never tell my dad that, because my dad loved his siblings. Like, he loved them. Like, my dad is such a gentle soul, so easygoing. So to think that, I thought would hurt him. So I would have never told him that anyway. So when I got there to the hospital, she's there and my uncles are there. They're visiting. And there was nowhere for me to sit, so I was just standing there for the most part. And then she asked me, she said, did you find the debit card? I was like, no, I didn't. She was like, well, just maybe you can call and order another one, because I know that I used it to buy some a herbal medication for him, and that was almost $200. And that's, I had it then, but maybe he lost it. And I was thinking, like, this was just a couple days ago that you bought the herbal medication, so why don't you know where the debit card is, So I didn't say anything. So when my uncles left, they told him, they said, okay, bro, we'll see you later, and I'm thinking like, oh, they must be coming to where I live, because I'm here to pick him up, So anyways, the night goes on. I'm with my dad. I'm helping him get back and forth to the bathroom, and I'm seeing how weak he is, how he's not even really eating. He's not drinking that much. He's basically, my dad is dying before my eyes, basically. And So that night about 11, I left the hospital and I went to work from 11 to 7. I got off at 7 that morning, went back to the hospital. I had already called the hospital before I even got to town and told them that I was going to discharge him the next day, and they got the doctor to sign off on it. So the next morning, Sunday morning, the doctor came in, made rounds, and came and talked to me. And was like, "You're his daughter?" Absolutely. You know, we did the whole rundown. So it's about maybe after lunchtime. It's almost 1 p.m. By this time, I'm thinking like, why has no one showed up to visit him if they know that I'm taking him home with me, and this very well may be the last time they see him alive. You know what I'm saying? So I'm thinking like, why is no one here? No one's called, no one's come by, like, you know. So I reached out to my mom, and I wasn't on social media at the time. I reached out to my mom and asked her to send a message via Facebook to one of my family members to get to her dad, which was my uncle, my dad's brother. And so she reached out to my mom and was like, "Oh, well, we were going to come after church." So they had plans to come after church thinking that my dad would still be at the hospital. Remember that now. So I couldn't chance it. I couldn't stay around. We got discharged. I immediately put my dad in the car and drove home, which was like over a 2-hour drive. So we drive home. We get here. He did really good throughout the ride. I got him home. At this time, I didn't have him set up with hospice. I did call and do a referral over the phone, but I didn't have any equipment for him. I didn't have any supplies. My dad was incontinent at that time because he could not make it to the bathroom. He was too weak to make it to the bathroom. He was trying, but my hallway is so long, he could not get down there. So I ended up buying briefs for my dad and just doing the best I could. I turned my couch into like a bed with all kind of pads and sheets, everything to make him comfortable. I went out and bought sippy cups because he was so weak he could not hold a regular cup anymore. Just everything that I could do for my dad. And so I ended up taking care of my dad. And my aunt would call me and check on him every so often. She would call me and check on him. And then it got to a point where I couldn't answer all of her calls because at this time I was still working. I was still working full-time, like my full-time hospice job. So in the morning, I would have a schedule written down how to give my dad his medications. And I would start it off. I was up all night long, like every 3 hours my dad was getting medications, pain medications, trying to stay on top of it and changing him. It got to a point where I was changing my dad's brief. And as a daughter and as a dad, it's a dignity thing. You never think that your child would have to change you, put you on a diaper, but it was an honor and a privilege, and I would go back. If I had to go back, I would do it all over again, 10 times over, how many ever times, you know. But it was a point of that, and my dad couldn't feed himself anymore. I was feeding my dad, you know. He was still alert, oriented times 4. He was, you know, he was still with it and in his right mind. He was just extremely weak. So when I would leave in the mornings, I would get up at about 6 in the morning, try to make some breakfast, something that he could eat, something soft. I would feed him, give him his medications, make sure that he's dry. And then I would call my daughter downstairs and say, "I got to go see a patient, but you sit here with Papa and I'm going to come right back." I would leave, go see a patient, take care of my patient, do my charting, fly back home, check on my dad, change my dad, give him medication, give him water, whatever he needed. And then, "Okay, Dad, I'll be right back. I go see another patient," and come back. And this was how it worked. And then so my dad had a really good day. About maybe 4 days after that, he had a really good day. I ended up signing him up with hospice here, but for the most part, it was me taking care of him. He had a hospice nurse assigned to him. But on the 4th day, he had a really good day where he was up, he was talking. I called all of his siblings from his cell phone. I let him talk to him. I was just so happy. You know, I started thinking like, maybe I can heal him. Something in me lit up like, what if I can bring my dad back? What if I can, you know, it was just, I don't know. I don't know. For a minute, I lost touch with reality, you know, but I allowed him to call all of his siblings. No one had come to visit him yet. His sister, Michelle, was saying that, "Oh, I'm going to come see him this weekend if you don't mind." And I was like, "Of course I don't mind. You just let me know. I'll be home. I'll guide you in. I'll give you the address. You know, of course I don't mind." Didn't quite understand why she kept saying, like, "if you don't mind," like it would have ever been an issue. So then that never happened. And then that weekend came and my dad took a turn for the worse. He was sleeping like maybe 20 hours out of the day, maybe 22. That Friday he got a bath and he slept throughout the whole bath. He never like woke up. He just was like in a deep sleep. And I remember reaching out and telling her, I said, "You know, if you guys are going to come visit him, I would suggest doing it soon." I said, "Because I'm not sure if he'll even make it through the weekend, you know." And I said, I just want to put that out there. So my dad had another sister that he was super close with. She ended up coming a couple days later. She got her daughter to bring her up here, and she came to see my dad. And my dad at that time, I remember looking up at him, and she was saying, hug me around my waist. And I looked up, and he had his arm around her waist, and he was patting her. And she asked him if he knew who she was, and he said her name. Can't get my words right. And up until that point, I hadn't been able to get him. He had stopped drinking. He had stopped eating. It was just like he just didn't want it. He didn't want it. But that night, he drank a whole Boost for her. He ate one whole cup of applesauce. He drank a full cup of water. And I was like, okay, And that night when she left, I remember going over to his hospital bed, because eventually he got a hospital bed. I remember going over to his hospital bed, and I was calling his name. He had been getting to a point where I couldn't stimulate him by just saying Dad. I would have to call his name like 8 times, and then maybe I would say his real name, and he would turn like it was like lights on, but nobody was home type deal. And he didn't respond to his real name that night. And I remember thinking to myself as I walked over to my couch to lay down, I remember thinking like, wow, I'm feeling like the last time my dad looked at me was the last time my dad was going to be able to look at me, because I just could not get him to arouse. And I went to sleep on the couch that night. And no, before I went to sleep on the couch, my aunt called me. Michelle called me and said, hey, I heard my other sister came to visit. Me and my brothers are going to rent a car this weekend. This was on a Tuesday. She said, we're going to rent a car this weekend and come and see him. I said, I don't know that you have I don't know that you have the time that you think you have. I said that, but in a nice way. And I left it at that. I went to sleep that night, and the next morning I woke up about 6 or 7 a.m. It was way before my alarm clock went off. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I got extra time. I'm going to lay down and snooze a little bit. But something told me, get up, go check on your dad. I had started sleeping. When I brought my dad home with me, I slept on the couch. That way I could hear him, because his voice was so low and so hoarse. I knew that if I went upstairs, I couldn't hear him. And I didn't even want to miss anything. It was kind of like having a baby in the home. Like, you don't sleep at night. You find yourself watching them sleep. I'm watching his chest rise and fall. Like, is he breathing? Does he need something? Are you in pain? I'm waking him up. Are you okay? I found myself not even letting him rest, because I felt like if I constantly kept him engaged with me, then I knew he was still here with me. I don't know. So I went over to look at him that morning, and that morning he was like breathing so fast, like maybe I counted, he was like breathing 40 something times a minute, and the normal was between 10 and 20 breaths a minute. He was breathing like 40 something, and his head was kind of like crooked to the side, and he was just breathing very rapidly, very rapidly. And it was, I'll never forget it. He was breathing so fast, and I panicked, and I called my mom. I said, Mom, can I FaceTime you? Can I show you something? And I FaceTimed her, and I said, Mom, I think my dad, I think he's dying, Mom. I think he's dying. And I know what I'm looking at, y'all. But in this moment, all of my nursing judgment, my nurse sense, my hospice nurse that went out the window. I wasn't a nurse. I was a daughter that was watching her dad die in front of her. And I felt helpless in the moment. And my mom, she said, baby, she said, yes. She said, he is, and I climbed up in the bed with him. I climbed up in the hospital bed with him, and I put his arm in my head, and I rubbed his head, and I prayed with him. I prayed over him, and I was trying to give him some Ativan in his cheek to maybe calm him down. I thought that maybe he's breathing so fast because he's worked up. And when I put the Ativan in his cheek, it kind of just dribbled out of the corner of his mouth, and I just cleaned his mouth up, and I prayed with him, and I told him, I said, Dad, I said, it's okay. It's okay. I said, it's okay if you go, because I felt like he was leaving me in that moment. And I felt like he had hung around a very long time, because even though I told him a lot that I was okay and he could leave, I often would break down over him. I would be caring for him and just lay across him and just cry, because it was like, I am, oh. This is still fresh for me, y'all. It is May. I just buried my dad last month. Okay. So I felt like he was still hanging around a lot for me, because I was saying one thing, but I was doing another. I was saying I was okay, but I was crying in front of him. I was saying I was okay, but I was breaking down on his chest, So I felt like I needed to boost myself up to maybe convince myself so that I sounded convincing to my father. And I told him, I said, Dad, it's okay if you go. It's okay. You know, I prayed with him, and that heavy breathing went on for a while. And I had the phone propped up on FaceTime. I had my mom on the phone, and I turned to her to say something to her. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw a glare. It was so bright, y'all. It was like a white light in my dad's eyes. This whole time, his eyes had been closed. And I turned to him and I said, Mom, his eyes had like a bright white light in them, and his eyes were open. They were open and looking up. And at the same time, the breathing slowed down. It slowed down. It's like, I knew that his life was leaving his body. His soul and his body had come into an agreement at that point. And he took a couple deep breaths, and he frowned his eyebrows up a little bit, and he leaned up and he took one last breath. And I closed his eyes. And that was it. That was the morning. My dad passed at 8:48 a.m. March 27th. And I called the hospice nurse and told her that he had passed, and she was literally walking in my door when I told her that he had passed away. And I called the funeral home. My sister was aware of this as well, because my sister was trying to get to me. She was en route to my house. And okay, yeah, sorry. And so my sister was en route. She had just come off a business trip. She was coming to me, and she was about 45 minutes out when all this happened. And so my sister, after the hospice nurse came, my sister came in the door, and I thought that my mom had communicated to her that he had passed. My sister got there maybe about 15 minutes later. I thought my mom had communicated to my sister that my dad had passed. So when my sister walked in the house, she said, "How is he? Is he okay?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Dad, is he okay?" I said, "He's dead." And that was just like, that was the hardest thing. That was one of the hardest things I had to do, because she did not even know. She didn't even know that he had passed away. And he passed like 15 minutes before she got there. So we called the funeral home. Now, mind you, our funeral home was out of our hometown, out of another state. I called the funeral home. They took down details over the phone. Like they're getting all this information, like background information, my dad's parents, his siblings' names, my names, and all this stuff. Like they're doing the worth draft for an obituary, apparently. This is unbeknownst to me. I've never buried anyone. I've never made funeral arrangements. So some things I was not sure about. So I called my aunt on the phone. And I called her when he was passing as well, when he passed away. I called her. She wanted to be on FaceTime. My sister FaceTimed her after he had passed away. So I'm on the phone. I'm asking questions. One of my uncles is on the phone, and he's telling me like what my grandmother's maiden name was, because this is questions the funeral home is asking. So about an hour or so later, the funeral home comes. We get my dad situated on the gurney. I get him dressed, and we get him rolled out of the house, and I watch him leave. This was a Wednesday. I did not go home that Wednesday. That Thursday, I went home. I went to my, I started funeral arrangements, because the funeral home, they basically jump-started everything when I called them to make them aware of his passing. So when I called the pastor of my dad's church, I was asking about him preaching the service, him preaching the funeral, the cost and all that. He told me, well, he was an active member, so there is no cost. There is no cost. And he told me, he said, your uncle, one of your other uncles, has already purchased like several burial plots. Talk to him. He may give you one instead of you having to buy one, because they've already been purchased. So I called my aunt and I told her what he said. She said, well, you just talk to him down here. Meet at my house tomorrow. I said, okay, fine. I got on the road. I came down to my hometown, went to my aunt's house. When I got there, me and my aunt sat at the kitchen table. She helped me do the rough draft for the obituary, like the layout of it, and recommended people that could preach, people that could sing. We got on the phone and called people to try to schedule, people that could fulfill these roles. We went back to his room to see if he had a suit or anything, but I told her, I said, he's lost so much weight, I'm just gonna buy a suit for him. That's what I told her. And so my uncle walks in that she's telling me to talk to about buying a plot about the burial plot. And I told her what their pastor had said, and she said, oh yeah, just give him $300 for it. And he's co-signing with her. He's like, yeah, you could just give me $300. So in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, so I'm giving you $300 and then you're going to pay the church to purchase the plot. Whole time, y'all listen. Whole time, the plots had already been purchased. He wanted me to purchase a plot from him. I'm just thinking, I don't know. I might be wrong, maybe, but my sibling, you don't have to purchase a plot from me. You don't have to purchase a plot from me for my sibling. You can have this plot because this is my brother. We went to church together. We are tight. Same mama, same daddy. Like, we tight. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to purchase no plot from me. I want to do this. I want to. Anyway, okay. I didn't say anything. Started funeral arrangements there. Went home that night. Drove back home that night. Continued to make funeral arrangements. Purchasing suits. Me, my niece, my mom, and my sister, we were the ones like trying to get his suit together, purchasing hats and everything that he needed, you know, just trying to make sure everything was okay. So come Friday, I didn't go down the road either. I told my aunt on Thursday when I was there, I said, I have an appointment at the funeral home on Saturday. She says, I will help you. I'll come up there and help you. I said, okay, well, I got to be there at 4 o'clock. So Saturday comes, I get down the road and, I go to this funeral home. It's me, my mom, my sister's boyfriend, and my kids. And nobody from my dad's side is there. Not even my aunt that I just talked to. So when I leave the funeral home, I created a group text with my aunt, her daughter, and one of my other cousins, my girl cousins. Because those are the 3 people I was in contact, you know, had numbers for. Not even in contact. My aunt was my main point of contact. And I pretty much just told them everything that was told to me, like telling them the time of the funeral, how many family cars there would be, what time the family car would be there. And, you know, I gave them everything that they gave me. So it was like 3 hours later, nobody texted me back. And then I got a text outside of the group chat from my cousin. She texted me and was like, hey, I was just about to text you. There are some names that are misspelled in the obituary. So when I left the funeral home put a write-up in the newspaper listing the relatives, like the siblings or whatever. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, okay, it's a misspelled name in the obituary. Like, that's what you want to tell me, you know, at this time? Like, okay, and why didn't you text me in the group chat? You know, so something is already going off in my head. Like, something ain't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it because I had no reason to think anything was wrong. Like, you know, I'm just thinking in my head. Like, my intuition is telling me, like, okay, ain't nobody text me back. It's been 3 hours. And then she texts me separately and talking about misspelled names in the newspaper write-up. So I texted her. I was like, okay. I said, well, I'll reach out to the funeral director and see if it could be fixed. And she was like, if you can, don't. She said, okay. She was like, but if you can't, don't worry about it. I was like, okay. So I reached out to him. I was like, okay, it's corrected, you know. So anyways, I'm getting on the interstate to go home that night. It's about 9 o'clock that night. Mind you, I met at the funeral home at 4 o'clock. I text them probably about 5. It's 9 o'clock. I'm merging onto the interstate. I get a long text message, a long text. So I glance at it and I'm thinking like, oh, finally they respond. It was not what I thought it was going to be. This was a whole message about this long telling me how I had done everything that I had excluded the family from everything. I had done everything and shut this person's mama out. I shut my cousin's mom out, shut my Aunt Michelle out of everything. And my family is noticing it, and it's not liked by any. It's noticed by many and liked by none. And she's just saying what everyone else is thinking. And she don't really care if I have a repast or no repast or a funeral or no funeral. I'm just telling you how you have treated my mama. And I'm like, what? Are you serious right now? I told her, I said, oh no, you just hold on. You hold on till I get home. She said, okay, take your time. I'm going to tell y'all. Hold on. So when I get home, it's been about 2 hours or whatever. When I get home, I immediately respond to the text. At this time, no one still has responded. The only person that has sent this message is my cousin, my aunt's daughter. And then my other cousin that was in the group chat, like, emphasized her message. You know how you can hold down a message and react to it. She didn't love it or anything. She emphasized it. So I addressed everything that she said in the text, and I basically was like, how did I exclude your mom? I was like, I was just there with your mom on Thursday. We sat down and did the rough draft of the obituaries together. I said we went back there to pick out clothes, but they were too big. I said I even invited her to come and do funeral arrangements with me. And I said, and I you know, like mentioned my aunt, I'm like, you need to say something. Is this how you feel? Like, do you feel like this? Because your daughter's talking about some bull crap. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, you need to let her know she on some bull crap and she don't know what she's talking about. You know? So I'm like, I'm tagging my aunt in, like, hey, say something. And so I asked my other cousin that emphasized the message. I'm like, now, me and you been all right. It ain't been no beef with nobody. I'm like, you emphasized her message, so you agree with her? You agree with what she's saying? And so that cousin responded and was like, I'm just saying, you know, this is what's being said. I agree with what she's saying. This is how everybody is feeling, you know. So I dismissed her. I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, I don't have no problem with you. This ain't got nothing to do with you. So y'all, at this time, I'm trying to keep it cute in the messages. I'm not cussing because at the same time, I'm heated, but I'm still respectful. Like, I do try to live right. Like, I respect my elders. My aunt is in here. I didn't even know my aunt had a problem up until then. I didn't even know she was feeling any type of way. So all this is like blindsiding me. But I'm still being respectful because, like I said, I'm thinking me and her cool. Like, you need to get your daughter under control because me and you good, right? So anyway, the daughter comes back and says, your dad would not have liked this and we're not helping to pay for it. Because I asked them, I said, well, they were asking me about a repass. Are we having one? You know, because I told them to hold on, let me decide what the family wants to do. She was like, what do you mean let you decide what the family wants to do? Aren't you family? And she was like, and we're not paying for a repass when he left you the funds to do so. I said, first of all, I haven't asked y'all to pay for anything. I have not asked y'all for one dime, and none of y'all have come forward to help me with anything. Nothing. Not a suit, not a hat, not a burial plot, not a musician, not a singer, not nothing. Nobody came forward to help me or to offer to do anything, and I didn't expect them to. Would it have been nice? Yes. Would I wanted to do this by myself? No, I had no idea what I was doing. Thank God, like I said, for my family, my mom, my sister, my niece, my husband. That was my support at the time, and my kids. You know what I'm saying? And she went on to say, well, and I told her, she said, oh, you want, I said, you're coming at me like this at a time like this. And I just lost my dad. You get what I'm saying? I was like, until you've held your mom and she took her last breath, don't ever fix your mouth to tell me what I should be doing or what I shouldn't be doing for my dad. I said, that's my dad. I'm his daughter. She was like, you want points for being a daughter, for doing what a daughter should have done. Whoop-de-damn-do. You should have been done it. You should have been came and took him to your house. He had my mama up all night. And I'm like, what? What? I've always been in the picture. I've always been present. I've always gone above and beyond what a daughter should do. And like I said, I'll do it again. Like, don't ever try to fix your mouth to say I ain't been there. And I'm telling her, I'm like, you know, Michelle, you need to say something. Like, what your daughter talking about? What's she on? What you mean had you up all night? Like, what? My dad just got down sick within this last month where he couldn't do for himself. Yeah, he got weak, but he was still doing for himself, still driving and stuff. So what's these lies you telling? Because you don't even be there all night. You be out at the card game. So what are you talking about? What your daughter talking about? And she was like, you should have, you should have been did it. Should have been took him home with you. Had my mama up all night. And he lived with my mama. My mama gave him a place to stay. My mama gave him a car. And I had to correct her. I said, okay, let me let you know something. Yeah, he lived with your mama, but surely you don't think he lived there for free, right? Because I've seen the bank statements. I've seen them. I've seen the bank statements. He's paid his way. Okay. Your brother's car is on my dad's car insurance. Okay, your mom just withdrew $500 out of his account before he went into the hospital. What was that for? What was that for? So again, okay, here comes my aunt. I said that she was like, she came in basically saying like, she came in talking about insurance policy. Of all the stuff we talking about, she come in talking about insurance policy. Talking about, you took my name off the policy. Me and your name both was on there. I was first beneficiary, then you. And then I noticed that you took my name came off and it was just you. So after I seen that you was the only person on there, I fell back and let you handle everything. Boom. There you go right there. That was the whole issue. This is what the whole issue is. And I told her, I said, so what we arguing about, an insurance policy? She was like, what the hell? Like, that her and her daughter cussing. They cussing in the message. So I'm like, okay, the respect went out the window. At this point, me and the daughter gets on the phone. We going back and forth. So what it comes down to, the daughter's telling me, well, I'm only going off of what I was told. So I said, so your mom told you this stuff? Like, basically, your mom sold all this discord because you're trying to You are essentially defending your mom, or what you think has been offensive to your mom. This is all coming from your mama, right? Somebody, I said, me and your mom have been like this throughout this whole process. We have been like this. We have been in constant communication, just me and her. I said, I was just there with her. I said, you ask her these things. She was like, well, I ain't know nothing about that. Of course you didn't know nothing about that. And your mom didn't show up to the funeral home because she wanted to run with this narrative. So what it boiled down to, she done told the family, got the family thinking that I came down when my dad got sick and snatched him up out the hospital with this power of attorney and took over. And I took him up here and shut everybody out. And then when he passed away, I took over some more and just did all the funeral arrangements. Basically, it was just like doing everything and telling them what time and where to be. That was never the case. That never happened. And I told her, I said, the only reason he's here is because your mom called me and said that she had a conversation with y'all's siblings, her siblings, and they agreed for her, that she couldn't take care of them and neither would they, and that I should come and get him. So you ask your mama that. You get what I'm saying? Like, so it was just a whole mess. I couldn't believe she sowed all this discord between the family. It was just a mess, y'all. So the day of the funeral, no, the next day, this sister calls me wanting to argue some more. I was like, hey, I just was reading over the group chat last night and I saw something you said that didn't sit well with me. You said you saw the bank records. He only did this. He only paid this. That shit, excuse me, that's bullshit. That was bullshit. I saw the bank records. I know conversations that me and my dad have had before, okay? I'm not a fool. And he's not a liar. And she was going on. She's like, and he ain't had the education to know to take me off. Okay, guys, my camera died. So anyway, yeah, she's saying like, oh yeah, I didn't like what you said in the messages last night, talking about you saw the bank records. Your dad only paid X amount of money in bills a month at my house. Y'all, this is complete and utter bullshit. Like, excuse my French, this is bullshit. I have went through the bank records. I have seen his car insurance records. My dad was paying for his car insurance as well as her son's car insurance, and want me to think that you were reimbursing him for that. If that's the case, just put him on your car insurance, right? Why even go through all the red tape? I looked at his phone records. As I stated previously in the video, y'all, I've been paying my dad's phone bill for over 4 years now. Never missed a month. I bought the phone. Why is there another phone bill coming off of his debit card? My dad doesn't even know how to use his debit card, okay? My dad is so old school that he drives to the bank to withdraw money from his debit card. He doesn't swipe and he doesn't use at a foreign ATM, okay? Because he was not up to speed with that. He was just very old school. So who's swiping his card? Who's charging their phone bills on his card? You know what I'm saying? So, and I told her, I said, and she mentioned the life insurance again, and she was like, she made the comment saying he didn't have the education to know to take me off of his policy, and that pissed me off because first of all, don't insult my dad, and like I told her, I said, okay, he might not have them, but I damn sure do. I do. I got the education, and I know to take your ass off, and that's what I did. Who in their right mind would sit down and put themselves down as primary beneficiary over somebody's policy when they have a living child that is very much involved in their life? My dad didn't have a spouse at the time that he died, so quite naturally his insurance would have gone to his children, not his sister. And like I told her, I said, I can guarantee you that you don't have any of your siblings now as beneficiary on your life insurance policy when you have 2 living children. I even told her daughter that, and her daughter was like, I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. That was greed. That's greed. That's manipulation. That's somebody that don't give a damn about you. You will offer gain. So, anyway, my phone went dead after that. I didn't call her back. This was maybe like 3 days before the funeral. And like I told her, I said, and I invited you to come to the funeral home to make funeral arrangements with me. I said, and you didn't show up. I said, and you didn't show up. She was like, well, let me tell you something. You told me you think you had to be at 4 o'clock. Why didn't you call me back to say, that's not fair? That's not fair, because somebody that wanted to be there would have, this is my dad that just died. I understand you love him as your brother, but this is my father. This is who gave life to me. This is my hero. This is my everything. You want me to take care of my father up until the day that he died. Stay with him while he passes away. He passed away in my home. I'm doing funeral arrangements, and you expect me to remember to call you and remind you of an appointment time? If you wanted to be there, you would have called me to say, hey, I just wanted to be sure. You said you thought it was at 4 o'clock. Is that right? Because I really want to be there. So somebody that wants to do something will do it. If you don't, you have an excuse for it. And now in hindsight, looking back, I feel like she ran with that narrative and didn't come to the funeral home because she had already painted this picture of I was shutting everybody else out. So that just played into the narrative that she wanted to run with. Okay. Then they start saying, oh, well, we've had all these people come to the house bringing cards, but where were you? Where were you? Obviously, I'm handling shit. I'm handling shit. But not once, those people that brought those cards with money to your house, not once did you say, let me hold these for his daughter. Let me split these with his daughter. Let me ask her if there's anything I can help her buy for this funeral of my brother. No, you kept them cards. You kept the cards, you kept the donations, you kept all that, and I didn't mention a word because I don't care. I don't care. I told my dad when he first got sick, I was going to be with him to the end. It was just going to be me and him, and I honored that all the way to the end. So I didn't care about the money, but now y'all done pissed me off. Now you done pissed me off. So that was that. We didn't talk or anything. I paid my uncle the $300 for the burial plot. I paid for a musician to come. I did everything. Everything that had to be done was done. The night before the funeral, I got a hotel. I came to my hometown. I got a hotel. I got a text from my aunt that says, I wanted to let you know that you really put your father away nice, because this is the day that they could go view his body. I did not go with the rest of the family. I went on my own by the time I knew everybody was leaving, because I felt like I was in such a messed up headspace. I couldn't even grieve properly. Like, I felt like it was selfish of y'all to do that to somebody that's grieving, somebody that just lost their parent. It's like the nerve and the audacity and the disrespect. I would never do that to y'all. I wouldn't do that to anybody. So I didn't go and view my dad's body with them. I purposely went late. And that night about 9 o'clock before the funeral, she texted me and was like, I just wanted to let you know that you did a really great job with putting your father away, and he would not have approved of our behaviors. And I texted her back and I was like, you know what? It's all good. You know, I love my family. I've always loved y'all. You know, and I left it at that. The next day at the funeral, I did not go to the home to ride in the family car. I didn't want to do that. I drove to the funeral by myself. I went in the funeral and sat down by myself. While I was waiting for my family to get there, I got there early. My cousin that I had just got into it with, my aunt's daughter, she walked in. She didn't speak. She walked to the bathroom. She walked back out. She didn't speak. I can count on one hand how many family members of mine spoke to me that day. And I was sitting right on the front pew, right? My uncles walked in. I had one uncle that was very close with my brother, with my dad. They went to church every Sunday as well. He caught me outside of the funeral and thanked me. He was dressed in the same colors that I put my dad away in. He was dressed in those colors. He thanked me and told me, I'm proud of you. You did a great job. I love you. You know what I'm saying? And I appreciated that, because y'all, they have no idea what I was carrying in that moment. And y'all brought that bullshit into my life at a time like that, with lies and greed and discord. You get what I'm saying? I didn't even cry, y'all. I sat on the front row. I didn't even cry during my dad's funeral. I think I dropped 3 tears when someone started to sing, because I had no regrets. I've been a great daughter to my father. My dad deserved nothing but the best. The type of man he was, he deserved the world. If I could have kept him here in perfect health, I would have done so. I didn't cry because I knew I had no regrets. I did my part. I did everything. I know that my dad was pleased with me. You know, I didn't hang around after the funeral. I left immediately in the parking lot. They had a repast. And to this day, only one of my family members have reached out to me. And that was one of my cousins that was in that original group chat that I said, you know, you don't have anything to do with this. You know, you don't have any issues. She has checked on me. And I appreciate that. But in that, now looking back, I'm still like flabbergasted at the way my family turned on me. Like, because I can understand one person telling a lie and running with a narrative, but why wouldn't you want to know for yourself? People that didn't call to find out on their own and just sat back and decided not to help, not to be a part, not to check on me, not to do anything for their brother, that makes me feel like you believed it because you wanted to. Because anybody else with any sense would have reached out. Let me get an understanding for myself, because this doesn't make sense that this girl does not want help. This doesn't make any sense that this is a young woman who's never planned a funeral, who's never lost a parent, who's never lost anybody close to her, is wanting to take on all of this on top of taking care of her dad up until his last breath. That's a lot for anybody. So I've lost all respect for them. I really have. And I'm not mad. But this has really shown me that family really don't be family. When money is involved, money, you need money to live, but money will make people do the ugliest things to you. They really will. They really will. I was so hurt by this. And I just keep thinking to myself like, Dad, you would not believe how they treated me. You would not believe how these people have treated me since you left. You know, and it breaks my heart. It really breaks my heart. Like, this is not a distant family of mine. These are people that I grew up with, like spending the night at their house. I've always had a good relationship, always had a close relationship with this. This is not an estranged family. This is not that situation. So I'm just so, I'm hurt and I'm disappointed, like, to my core. Like, I just would have never thought this in a million years, y'all. And I have so much more I could say about this, like the lengths of greed this lady went to after this, but it's still legal issues, so I can't speak on it just yet. But when it's all settled, I'm gonna come back and tell y'all some more stuff. But I never thought, to sum it up, guys, when I told you I was a hospice nurse, I went to hospice. I never saw myself doing hospice. I started hospice in January of 2024. My dad got a cancer diagnosis in December of 2023. I never would have thought that I would have been my dad's hospice nurse. Never in a million years. But God placed me in this role for a reason, because he knew that I would be here for a time such as what came about. And I was in the right place at the right time to fulfill what God needed me to do for my dad. But I just want to say, y'all, that when you're facing adversity, when you're going through trials and tribulations, God will give you the strength that you never thought you had. You guys have no clue how I doubted myself. I didn't know how I was going to take care of my dad. My dad got so weak to the point where I was literally lifting him up, cradling him in my arms like a baby to turn him, changing his brief. I was bathing my dad, clothing him. But I felt so honored. You know, I didn't even know how I was doing it most days. Like, how am I working a full-time job and taking care of my dad full-time and being a full-time mom and still trying to just maintain my sanity? How am I able to sit here and comfort my dad as he's dying in my arms and not lose my own mind? How am I able to dress my dad now that he's dead and walk him to the door to roll out of here on a gurney to go to the funeral home? How can I go and pick out these clothes and take him to the funeral home and sit here and go and see my dad and knowing I can't take him with me? This is it. I will never have my dad again. I will never hear him say I love you again. Like, I didn't even know where the strength came from, and I'm still, a month later, I haven't grieved, and I'm wondering, like, is it something wrong with me that I'm not torn up? But I think I have a peace about the situation. I have a peace because I did my part. It's not for play. It's not for social media. It's not a facade. This is real. Like, I am who I say I am. I don't have to fake it for anybody. And I didn't need no insurance money. I needed my dad. And I needed my family to be there for me, to support me the same way I would have for them. And if they couldn't do that, then I just needed them to not hurt me in the process of me already being hurt. But y'all, that's my story time. I just wanted to come on and tell y'all how I became my dad's hospice nurse, how I, overcame a lot of things in times where I felt like I couldn't even breathe. And I hope that's some encouragement for somebody out there that's going through something, y'all. I don't know what you're going through, but trust me, God will give you strength to get through it, y'all. And when you get through it, don't forget about the people that gave you a hard time when you was already having a hard time. And there's no need to seek revenge. Vengeance is mine, said the Lord. I'm serious, y'all. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Instagram at Nique_rozay. Y'all, I'm sorry. This is just throwing me off. This has thrown me off. It's still very fresh for me. It's still very mind-blowing to me. I haven't even grasped everything yet. But this was therapeutic for me because it gives me an outlet. Like, it allows me to feel like I'm getting stuff off my chest. So thank y'all for allowing me to vent. Catch y'all in my next video. Bye.